Hey everybody, this is David with Option Avenue. Today we have Stan Mak Ming on, and he's going to be discussing his book, Shimmering Across Time. Hey Stan, thanks for joining
Yes.
us. So we're talking a little bit beforehand, but could you give us a brief summary of your book?
Yes, it's the genesis of the book came from a little story. Has to do with someone from America who decided to go to Laos to purchase coffee beans over there from the villagers and roasted the coffee and then sell them in America. And the money was able to generate, and he used it uh, to find clean water for the farmers and the villagers in Laos. And I was intrigued by the idea of the story. But I thought to write a book on it, it may be a little too small of an idea. So I thought about my background. I grew up in Hong Kong and exposed to the Asian culture for many years. And then I came to America for college and then spent years in the media business. So I said to myself that while many people have written books about uh, the purpose of life, why are we here, and where does faith and fate come in? And so why should I write a book about that? Well, I came to the conclusion that because of my unique background, I'm a product of the East meeting West,
Mhm.
and so that's what led to writing Shimmering Across Time, and part of it is the history I've learned growing up. Went to school in Hong Kong. The last days of the Qing Dynasty was a very tumultuous period in China. And then you have the introduction of Christianity through American missionaries who they went to China to preach the gospel. So you have this interesting confluence of the Eastern belief, which largely is based on Buddhism and a little bit of Confucianism and Taoism. And then the West came in introducing the Christianity to the Chinese people. And so I thought that is a interesting window for me to explore, why we're here. And is there really a difference whether you are somebody who grew up in China or from America?
Mhm.
And then I decided to inject an element of miraculous into the novel. It has to do with the influence of reading the Narnia series. The lion in the Narnia series is supposed to be Jesus,
Mhm.
and so I thought to make the book interesting, in particularly for young adults and teenagers. Then I decided to grab onto dragonfly, a giant dragonfly that interacts with some of the characters in the novel.
Mhm.
And so I would say the overall theme about my novel is where does the inspiration come from? I think it comes from observing and actually admiring the unyielding human spirit. As we know that life can be very difficult and challenging. And for whatever reason, some people are able to rise to the occasion and they don't fold their hand. They keep forging ahead. And in the search of overcoming the obstacles that came their way, I think they begin to realize why they are here and what is the purpose of their existence. And then the backdrop, because it took place in China and then Vietnam and Laos, that I was able to take the beauty of the Southeast Asia and use it as a backdrop for the story.
Hmm.
And because it's a what I would call a historical novel, so I wanted to make sure that the major events that took place during that period, the last days of the Qing Dynasty, the Opium War, and the refugees who were forced to leave their homeland and ended up going to Vietnam. And then because of the Vietnam War, then they had to once again pull up their roots and then went to Laos just to survive and to avoid the ravages of war. So
Hmm.
does that help give you a sense
Yeah,
of
definitely. Could
the
you
book?
talk about the main characters?
Yeah, the story really is built around a family, the Yu family, YIU, Yu family, and the family was in Canton, now it's Guangzhou, but before it became Guangzhou in the Mandarin dialect, in the back in the day when the West came in to do trade, Canton was a major trading port,
Okay.
and the Yu family made their money from the trading business. And the grandfather of the family uh, decided to build a very uh, beautiful, gorgeous, magnificent mansion and garden for his family. And then after he passed away, his son took over. And then things started to go bad in China. In other words, it doesn't matter how wealthy you are and how much money you have, the uh, the force of history uh, is so powerful that forces his family to decide to leave their gorgeous, magnificent mansion and take a ship and travel to Hanoi to avoid the civil war that was underway in China.
Hmm.
And then life was fine for quite a while in Hanoi, but then things got crazy because of the independence movement in Southeast Asia. You know, the communists uh, decided to overthrow the Vietnam government, and Hanoi was caught up in the conflict. So
Hmm.
once again, the Yu family was forced to leave once again, and this time they decided to go to Laos because they were really fed up of what wars have done to them. So they wanted to get away to find a quiet little place, sort of an oasis away from this crazy world, and then eke out a living there. So the story is about the Yu family, a wealthy family forced to leave Canton, went to Hanoi, and then ended up in Laos.
Hmm.
Of course, there are many things that happen along the way, and but the reader will enjoy their journey because it will bring the reader along the way and share their difficulties, their challenges, and sort of we all end up feeling the same about the challenges that come to us in life. You know, it doesn't matter you are a part of the Yu family or you're somebody who immigrated from a foreign country to America or from another country to another country because you wanted to find a place where you can raise your family, you can avoid the ravages of war. And so I think many of the things that the Yu family members came across, I would say is universal for people who are recent immigrants who came
Mhm.
to America and the difficulties they face. And hopefully this book, this novel, will encourage people that, you know, while life can be very difficult, but by overcoming the difficulties, we begin to realize that we're not just here, you know, to get 3 or 2 square meals a day and go to sleep and wake up in the morning and go to work. There
Right.
really is a bigger purpose of why we're here.
Hmm. That's great.
So
Um,
that's the genesis of the book.
yeah, no, I think it's great. Thanks for explaining. So how long did it take you to write the book, and what were some of the challenges you had?
Well, because I wanted to be historically accurate, so it took a fair amount of time to do the research. You know, even though I'm familiar with many of the major events that took place in Southeast Asia, like the collapse of the Qing Dynasty, the rise of the Republic movement in China, and the Vietnam War. But because the story is woven around a number of the major historical events, that I wanted to make sure that the facts that I chose for the book to stand on, they are accurate. So it took quite a while to do the research of the history. And then on top of it, you know, I never been to Laos and I never been to Vietnam. And I want to pay the proper respect to the people in Vietnam and Laos. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand the culture in Laos and in Vietnam. And I don't want to misstate, you know, the great people there and their culture, their customs. So I would say doing the research takes a lot of time, and then
Right.
try to construct the story to make it's a multi-generational journey and involves, you know, 5 different generations. So I want to make sure that the story is interesting to the reader.
Hmm.
And lastly, because you know the faith does come into play in the story, and I again I want to make sure that I'm representing the different religions and cast them in the proper light. The
Hmm. Yeah.
purpose really is not for me to preach or try to convince people one way or another. I'm using the encounters that the characters had with their religious pursuit or their question about faith and put it out there on a table and then let the reader experience what the characters experience and
Hmm.
then they can decide, you know, what is the right path for them to take. So it's not meant to preach or beat people over the head about Buddhism or Christianity.
Right. No, I think that's great. Okay, and then do you have any authors or books that influenced your writing?
Well, I read, I'm a fan of Tolkien series, um, the Narnia series, And my interest is quite broad. So I read novels, but I also are drawn to history quite a bit. And so I read a number of the books that are historically based. And I always find that interesting in the sense that it's not part of it you create out of your own imagination in terms of the storyline, but the major events that take place in a historical novel is not something you make up. You know,
Yeah.
you do have to be faithful to what actually happened in history. And that is your challenge or assignment to use those historical facts and then weave your storyline in and out of those major historical events.
Right. What are some of the key scenes that you think are crucial if your book gets adapted?
The 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 Yu family, you know, the the construction of that mansion, and but the way the book started is with this little girl who is the great granddaughter, you know, of the family. And now, you know, fast forward, she and her family actually now they are living in Laos.
Hmm.
And one day she wanted to go into the forest to pick berries for her mom to prepare a meal for the family. And she encountered a tiger, a wild tiger, and she ran for her life and fell into a ravine, and that led her inside a, a deep pond of water, uh, deep into this cave. And just when she thought that there's no way out for her, she'll never see her parents again, then miraculously a dragonfly show up, and the dragonfly with sort of his body language to encourage the little girl to dive into the water to find a way out of the cave, which she did.
Hmm.
She entered another cave and she was able to navigate her way to the end of the cave. And then lo and behold, she was able to get out in the open and she found herself standing on the ledge of a cliff. And underneath, below the cliff, is her familiar river. Namta is the name of the river. Now she knows she can get home. But the question is, does she have enough courage to take a dive from way above the river and into the river? And she ended up deciding, yes, I'm going to take the dive. And that was how the book was opened. And then it shift gear to the founder of the family in Canton building this magnificent um, mansion. And then after he passed away, of course, then the family fortune went to his son, and uh, and then his son has also another son, and then they came across the the Chinese Revolution that was unfolding during the time they were in Canton.
Hmm.
And so through that, uh, the major historical events that took place because of the Chinese Revolution, then they came across very difficult challenges. The one of the warlords uh, in Canton realized, how much money Yu Senior has, and so the warlord, kidnapped his wife and asked for ransom. Not
Mhm.
only ransom, but also one of the two sons, because he heard that these two sons are gifted kung fu fighters. So the warlord wanted to uh, take the older son along with a ransom. So in order to get his wife back, they were forced to let the number one son to go with a warlord, and so that was a I would say a very interesting chapter of how the Yu family dealing with a kidnapping episode,
Mhm.
and they also have um, a friend, a family, the Jung family. And the Jung family's daughter is about the same age as the younger son. And they fell for each other. And so there's that brought the two families closer together. But the Jung family, they also has a son who went to school, went to college in Japan. It was not uncommon in those days. The well-to-do families would send their sons and daughters, mostly sons, to Japan to study
Mhm.
because Japan was much more advanced in how they construct their society, and also when it comes to technology. Whereas the dynastic China was stuck in the old way. Even though the Middle Kingdom was a force to be reckoned with for centuries, but they became complacent. And
Mhm.
that's why it was vulnerable to the West to come in and take advantage of the Qing dynasty. So anyway, the Cheng family son was going to school in Japan, and he was exposed to the idea, the concept of creating a new China. So
Mhm.
he joined the revolutionary movement and came back to Canton. There was a revolt, about 120 people, and most of them were young people, and they went to attack the Qing viceroy uh, headquarters in Canton, and many of them didn't survive, and the son didn't survive, but he wrote a letter to his parents before he left for the revolt, apologizing to his parents that he didn't have a chance to say goodbye to them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the parents were, of course, very heartbroken and sad. And they asked the Yu family to see if they could help them, because the Yu family, being a wealthy, big family, they have servants, and one of the servants is a bodyguard. And so the the Yus asked the bodyguard, his family name is Leung, 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 who is a kung fu fighter. And he also happened to teach their younger son how to fight. So they asked
Yeah. Stan, hold on a
So,
second.
yeah, go ahead.
Let me jump around because I have a couple other questions.
Okay, please do.
What's some of the more memorable feedback you've gotten from the book
Or
from, readers?
yeah, I got some comments from readers, and one of the comments is when they began to read the book, they simply couldn't turn it down.
Okay.
They have to, and it's a very big novel, by the way. It's over 500 pages.
Mm,
And then and another reader responded by saying it it the book has brought the not just the customs, the culture, but the people of Southeast Asia. Um, the reader felt like he became a lot closer to the people who live over there. That is sort of breaking down the cultural barrier between the East and the West. And so there are a couple of these comments from the readers that I thought it is what I intended to do with the novel.
yeah, that's good.
It-
Are there any
it-
aspects to the book that you would change?
I wouldn't change anything of the book. Now,
Okay.
by the way, David, I started a sequel to the book,
Okay.
and I'm about halfway through the sequel because after the Shimmering Across Time was published, I went back and read it again, and I said to myself, there are sort of unfinished business in the plot that should be explored and taken to the next chapter. So
Okay.
that's when I decided to sit down and write a sequel.
Okay, cool. Okay. And then what are some comparable movies or TV shows once adapted?
Well, it's interesting. They brought back Shogun, uh, which was one of the books I adore. Read it years ago, and then it became a TV series and a movie. And I think Richard Chamberlain was the one who played the pilot who steered a ship into Japan, and that because the author James Clavell, I think, was using that historical period in Japan, the Shogun period, and then the interaction between Japan and the Western power, because
Hmm.
Portuguese and the Spaniards were very interested to set up shops in Japan to do trades, and also because the priests, the Catholic faith, is very powerful in the politics of Portugal, so they came to Japan to preach Christianity to the locals. So to some extent, it has some elements of my book because the Yu family um, and the Zheng family, these are prominent families in Canton, and particularly with the Zheng family, they have a son and a daughter. The son became a martyr in the revolt, and the daughter, they brought in a tutor, a American missionary, Mrs. Mary Smith, to teach their daughter English.
Okay.
And because it was considered fashionable for the wealthy people back in that period to be able to speak English. And
Hmm.
so they thought it was important to bring in a tutor to teach their daughter Gumfeng English. But in their exchange between a tutor and a student, the the concept of religion was brought up because Mary Smith is a missionary from Minnesota, and she was curious about the Gumfeng, the daughter's religious belief. And so they had a discussion about the differences between Buddhism and Christianity.
Hmm.
And one of the exchanges between the tutor and the student, it came to sort of a crescendo of their mutual exploration. And the daughter, Gumfeng, was intrigued by the concept of a savior, namely Jesus. And so she asked a question to Mary Smith. She said, can someone be a Buddhist and also be a Christian? Why do we have to choose one or the other? So it's a way to probe the human mind when it comes to religion.
Okay.
You know, do I go this way or do I go that way? Why is it that I have to choose? Why could I not be both? So
Yeah.
I didn't give the answer other than just laying it out there on the table for the reader to chew on.
Hmm. I think it's
And
great.
then going back to the bodyguard decided to go back to the viceroy's compound after the revolt and try to recover the son's body. And he was able to bring the body out of the compound. That was a very traumatic experience, not only for him, had to go into this room that was packed with dead bodies, but also for both families to uh, to go through the grieving, the mourning of losing a son. So that was, I thought it was one of the maybe more powerful chapters in the book.
Okay, cool. No, that's great. All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers the questions on our end about it.
All right.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to go through it all.
No, it's my pleasure. It's
Yeah. It's a big
you
book
know,
and yeah, with 5 generations, it's a lot to cover.
yeah, it's like, after writing the novel, it really sort of like your own child. And and when somebody comes along and say, "Hey, tell me about your boy," well, guess what? There's a lot, to share, with people who take an interest in my book. So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
appreciate the opportunity, David.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you again, Stan.
You bet.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Oh, could I ask you a couple follow-up questions? Has nothing to do with the book. You can
Yeah,
go ahead and stop the recording.
sure, let me end it.
All right. So